Nice smooth pace. Nice smooth pace. We are back. Zach Attack.
What's up?
Episode 17.
Oh, Zach Attack.
Podcast.
I see what you did there.
But thank you. Thanks for checking us out here again. We are recording right around Memorial Day weekend here, so wishing you all the best. Hopefully, it's a great weekend of recharging the battery, spending time with family and friends. Should have some decent weather here in Connecticut. We'll see. I think it's been a little bit of a roller coaster.
It has. It has.
So, Zach, this is our 17th episode since we started recording late fall of 2025.
Yep.
Right? And I'll joke a little bit here, but we might have referenced a particular activity.
Yeah.
It starts with a P, ends in an E, and it has the pipeline in the middle of it. We've referred to the activity pipeline probably 750 times at least over 17 episodes. And I would bet top dollar there are some people who are wondering, who have listened to our episodes, who are wondering what in the heck is this pipeline game that these two knuckleheads keep referring to.
You know, it probably took us too long to get into the details of this activity just because we use it so often and it's such a staple for empower leadership.
Yeah, it is. It is. And not only for empower leadership, like I look back at 1999, 2000. Yeah, no. So Zach and I were laughing. We were talking about old email addresses, and one of his first email addresses was zachattack@something, which we made fun of. And then I got to shout out my guy Jason Loeb, Springfield College graduate of mine, who gave me mine, which was Danimal23.
Tell us in the comments which one is worse.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, but yeah, Zach. When I first. As a college student taking classes like adventure education, and then one was a adventure education in phys ed teaching module. Like pipeline was one of the first things we did, right? So not only is it a staple for us, it's a staple in adventure education, kind of across the board. And it's a phenomenal activity, and we're gonna spend time during this episode kind of breaking it down. Zach's gonna weave in some pictures and videos to provide some eye test tangible content as well to paint the picture beyond just the words. But
absolutely,
and talking shop about pipeline.
Yeah, and then at the end, of course, of the podcast, if you want to look at how to do it on paper, we'll give you guys a PDF to reference to.
Yep. But yeah, this is a fun one. And for those of you that have been wondering, hopefully this satisfies the desire here to learn more about the pipeline activity. But pipeline, in its simplest version, or in its stock version or standard version, it's a team building initiative. It's generally best suited for a group of 6 to 12, 6 to 10, 6 to 12 people. And the general premise of pipeline is there's a starting line and then there's a finishing line, which is typically marked by some sort of bucket or can. And the task is that a group has to transport an object. We typically, our stock version, we're using a golf ball.
Yep.
They have to transport an object from the start line into the finishing bucket using sections of PVC tube that have been cut in half the long way, so it's like an open pipeline. And sounds simple. In this game, again,
the rules
stock version, all right?
Yeah.
So the rules of this game are what really put the parameters out there that take the concept that is very simple and make it a challenge. So before I get into the rules, the one key in this game is when you set it up, your start line needs to be, or your start line and finish line need to be far enough apart so the group can't connect their tubes and just have one straight shot, like going down a slide, right? You go down a slide at the the kiddie slides at like the playground or whatever. It's like you start and you end and it's over.
That's it. Yeah.
When you set up pipeline, the distance has to be greater than the sum of the pipeline tubes.
Right.
And you'll see why, which this will segue to the rules. So the rules in pipeline, and we're going to go standard version first, and then we're going to talk through some of the mods and extensions. Standard version, number one, everybody gets one tube, one pipeline tube. Number two, when you have the object, when you have the golf ball in your section of pipeline tube, you can rotate your upper body, but you can't move your feet.
Yep.
Rule 3, the golf ball cannot stop, roll backwards, or fall to the ground. Rule 4, the golf ball cannot touch anything other than inside of tube or inside of finish bucket.
Yep.
And the consequences for the rule break is very simple. The group must restart if the person with the golf ball moves their feet, the golf ball stops, rolls backwards, or falls to the ground, and or the golf ball touches anything other than the inside of your pipeline tubes and the inside of your bucket. And then we would say all those things. And yeah, we might have led this activity once or twice. It kind of flows off the tongue there. But then you break any of those rules, the group goes back to the start cone and tries again.
Right. That's the stock version. There's probably 10 different ways that we can make it easier, make it harder, but that would be the basic form of a pipeline is. And like you said at the beginning, it sounds easy. Like, oh, ball and bucket, use my pipeline. Like, great. But then what do you see when they're out the gate?
Great question. So you can anticipate seeing a few things. Number one, you can anticipate the mentality of let's get this over as fast as we can. So everybody holds their pipeline tubes in a manner. And I have a question. I was fortunate enough back in 2016, I think, to do a team building program with the Tampa Bay Lightning hockey team.
Yeah.
And pipeline was one of the activities that I was tasked to run. And I'll never forget one of the groups had Victor Hedman, who to me was like a 10-foot tall individual. He's a defenseman. I couldn't imagine what this dude looked like on skates, but he was an absolute giant of a man where I felt like I was talking to his belly button the whole time. And on the same team, they had a guy who I think at the time was a rookie. I think his name is Nikita Kucherov. Nikita Kucherov made me look like Victor Hedman. He was a little guy. Right?
Yeah.
But I'll never forget, they were, we got to do this fast. And Hedman says, I'm going to hold my tube up high, and we're going to go down towards the bucket, and we're going to rifle that ball into the bucket. And Kucherov must have dropped the golf ball about 5-6 times in a row. And they're busting his chops a little bit. They're having some fun with him. And I finally looked at the dudes, and this was a team, and they were mostly Russian-speaking individuals. So I knew I had like one or two people that understood what I was saying.
Yeah.
But I'm like, how can you expect that little Kucherov over there? How can he make an adjustment when he can't see what's going on? And they're like, oh. So they made the adjustment. Instead of like putting the tubes above your head and creating this roller coaster style ramp, let's just hold it flat so everybody can see what's happening. So thing number one you can anticipate is this feeling of like, we got to go fast to get the job done, which typically leads to a lot of struggle. So obviously there's some, let them struggle a little bit so they're more open to coaching. But then you're trying to get them to coach up like, speed is maybe not the desired outcome here. Control is. And how can you find control? Can you control stuff that you can't see? Maybe not, but not as well if we can see it. All right. So that's one thing that we typically will experience with a group.
That's probably the first thing.
Yeah, it's probably the first thing. And I would say it's one of the first things. The other first thing that typically happens is, and to me, it's a sign of lack of trust, not in a malicious way, but if I'm the person starting with the ball on my tube, and I'm responsible for getting it to Zach's tube, who's second in line, what generally happens is I don't fully trust my teammates.
Mhm.
So I'm going to roll the ball. I'm going to get it past to Zach. And instead of going to the end of the line to extend the pipeline, I'm going to sit there and observe.
Yeah.
And then what happens is that lack of trust or just that curiosity, it could be one of the two, right?
Mm-hmm.
That curiosity as to what's going on or that lack of trust of like, I got to make sure they're doing it right. The ball gets to the end of the ramp. You're not there. And it just does a straight up Evel Knievel off the end of the ramp. And it leads to a restart.
Yeah. And it goes without saying, 10 to 12 people, golf ball, you're talking, how many feet is that? 15, 18 feet.
Yeah, the tubes are I think 16 inches. So
Okay. We'll call it 20 feet.
20 feet. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll call it 20 feet. A golf ball goes from 0 to 20 in one pipeline extremely quickly, especially when you have an incline. So
When
not
you're
only
not under control of it. Yeah.
when you're not under control of it. So especially with like you said, the first couple rounds, it gets from 0 to 20 quickly, and you're watching the ball. So like it's just boom, boom,
So literally
and then
like catapult off of the end of the ramp.
yeah, and then that's when like I think especially the first couple, they're like, oh, this is a little harder than we thought. Like what can we do different?
There's a little reality check. I think you're right at that point, and it's usually at about like the 5 to 10 minute mark. Yep. They're like, damn, this is not as easy as I thought. So, the first like we talked about, like the big roller coaster ramp, the kind of the question would be like, what can you control better, what you see or what you can't see, and then they'll typically like, oh, let's lower it down so everybody has eyes on what's happening. For that second kind of common mistake, the watcher, the observer, it's hey, what are your two jobs in this activity? All right, well, we got to get the ball in the bucket. No, that's the goal. What are the two responsibilities? Like, what do you need to do when you have the golf ball? You need to get it to the next tube. Okay, cool, you're right. And then is there a standard? Yeah, we need to get we need to pass it to the next tube like under control. All right, cool. So everybody knows that everybody's going to be doing two jobs during this activity. One of those jobs is when you have the golf ball. And your mission is to keep it under control so it gets to the next tube in a controlled manner, not shot out of a rocket launcher. What's your other job? Like once you get rid of the golf ball, what's your other job? Oh, I got to go make the pipeline. Oh,
yeah.
I'm going to stand here and watch everybody. Oh, yeah, that's right. So, and then what's crazy about pipeline, it's not like when people hear about like trust building activities, people don't automatically think of pipeline. They think of like trust falls or like eyes closed type, like minefield type activities. But pipeline's a trust activity because if I am constantly getting rid of the golf ball and then running or walking fastly or running to the end of the pipeline and getting connected and letting Zach know, like, Zach, I'm here. Guess what Zach's going to develop? He's going to develop some trust in me.
Yep.
So we talk about like the important, like we'll ask questions and then discuss with the group, like if everybody just does their job consistently, that you won't have to babysit and watch each other because you'll trust each other to do their part. And the team is only as strong as their weakest link. In that instance, you're not going to have any weak links and you're going to get the job done.
Yes.
Another common mistake, and it's kind of under the same umbrella of lack of trust. Like I have the golf ball and I have it nice and smooth and controlled, but I didn't hear from the next person next to me like that, hey, they're set up. Yep. So this happens all the time and it's hysterical because you could literally put a clock on it and it's within 1 second. I'm checking if Zach is set up next to me, and as soon as I do, the ball shoots off
goes out the other
pipeline.
Yes.
And literally, it's like an immediate, like, as soon as you start to turn your chin to look, it's like, boop, restart.
Yeah.
So that's another thing that'll happen, and it's under that umbrella of trust. So, like, leaning into, like, role performance leads to trust, leads to team success.
Role performance leads to trust, and then and if you don't find that success and you do drop that ball, it's the opposite. It could be, hey, you messed up. Why'd you do that? Or if you're the one who messed up, who do you blame? Or as a team, can you collectively be like, okay, that was a mistake. How do we fix it on this next round? And you see that dynamic grow between, whatever program and age or profession that we're working with develop. And instead of the pointing fingers thing, it's learning from mistakes.
Yeah, it's, hey, Dan won't have to check if Zach is lined up. If Zach gets there and says, Dan, you're good.
Yeah.
And then we're back into like everybody just doing their job. And kind of to touch on your point about mistakes, and one of the things I love about Pipeline as well is it almost sets up like an experience where one person or two people are going to get blamed, which allow us the opportunity to remind them that when a mistake happens in this game, it's very rarely one person's fault. It's usually a compilation of actions by everybody.
Yep.
So again, the simple example there is, I'll go back to Victor Hedman and Nikita Kucherov setting it up on the roller coaster. Kucherov at the end of the line drops it, gets yelled at. What is he supposed to do? The tennis ball is traveling 90 miles an hour from the sky because of Hedman's height. Like, he has no choice but to drop it. So instead of blaming the last person in line for dropping the ball, it's, what did I do to set that person up for success or failure? And in that example, the other 7 teammates were like, dude, you have no choice but to fail. You're going to drop the ball because we're going to get it to you going so damn fast that it's literally going to just like jump off of your tube and go to the ground.
And it does. Doesn't matter how fast those hockey players are to get to the end, it's launching.
100%. Yeah. So like, which is awesome because these are pro athletes, like cream of the crop, and like they couldn't keep up with it in that format. So it sets up some great facilitation around. A lot of times mistakes happen because of a compilation of decisions or actions. And it from at first glance, it might look like it's one person fault, but in reality, it's an operational breakdown that needs to be fixed. How do we solve it?
Yep. And then going right off of that, you get to see some leadership and individual leadership evolve right from there. Who's going to take charge, not in a demanding or dictator type of way, but as a team of what's going to happen when their when their ball's in their pipeline. And this, depending on obviously the group, if you want to kind of gently nudge a group saying, hey, is it better for the ball to go faster or slower? Slower. Like, okay, who's going to slow, or if it without me, if it develops naturally, you'll see the ball come down, and then one person, without even saying a word sometimes, take the ball and just hold it in their pipeline. And they're like, what's he doing? They're not breaking any rules. They're looking down. Is everyone back, all 12 people back lined up? Okay, let's drop it. And you see that one person do it over and over again without even taking a leadership role, is doing a leadership action, a leadership thing to have that ball controlled and make sure that their team is good. And you're like, boom, got him. Like, why did we do that?
Yep. And then the last, so we covered the rocket launcher speed trial, like how fast can we get the golf ball to roll? Doesn't work. We covered either the curiosity observation or the lack of trust observation that happens, which leads to breakdowns. And then the third common mistake, and this is probably my favorite, because there's so many good teaching points, not because I can't be difficult, but my third is, they'll do all this work in like the planning phase and then in the early parts of the activity for like, how do we start? How do we make progress towards the bucket? Very rarely do groups consider, how are we going to actually get the ball out the bucket?
Yeah.
So you'll see.
I actually forgot about that myself just now.
So the finish line.
Yeah, slow and smooth, boys.
There he is.
There we go.
Nope.
There we go.
That's gone. All right.
It'll come back.
There we go.
The finish line.
Slow and smooth.
Thing number one is they're not prepared for it. So they have no idea how to navigate from like, we're moving the ball. Oh no, now we got to drop it. And generally they get excited because, regardless of its youth or adults, they get excited about the fact that like, oh my God, we are almost there. We almost completed the task. They all crowd around the bucket. And then there's this one poor participant, and it feels like they're in the middle of a mosh pit.
Who was close enough to finish, by the way.
Who is at the bucket.
At the bucket.
their teammates are so excited that they're almost dropping this extra load of stress on the situation. Like the person already feels stressful enough, like, damn, I got to be the one to put it in the bucket. And now everybody's like over the top of them.
Literally, yeah.
So, or they're trying to drop it from like 5 feet off of the ground as opposed to like lowering their bodies as they get closer to the bucket. So, but generally the groups will miss the bucket the first couple of times getting down there. One, because they haven't planned for how do we finish. They planned for the start. They planned for the transport. They didn't plan for the actual put it in the bucket. Two, they're excited about the success and they don't know how to handle what's the best practice there. So when that does happen, it's important to I usually will let the group run back 2 times or 3 times without talking about why the mistake happened at the bucket.
Yes.
Maybe the second or third time is when I'll say, hey, stop here for a second. You're running back and the same thing happens at the bucket. You're running back to restart and the same thing happens at the bucket that you miss. Why don't we stay here and figure out what the last 10 feet are going to look, sound, and feel like? Then we'll go back and we'll start with knowledge of how to finish as opposed to trying to build the plane while you're flying it.
Yes, that's a good analogy. And I think it's important to note that you let that happen. You let the mistake happen. You have to. Yeah, because if giving away, I don't want to say the answer, but giving away the specifics of how to do something that we've seen thousands of times isn't the point of why we're there. So it's really hands off, let's let them figure it out type situation, even when they're begging for the answer, no matter what activity it is, to see that mistake happen and how to develop it from there. How much help do we give them to get to the point of success?
Yep. And again, I think people are more pliable learners when they've realized through experience that like, hey, our way isn't working. And we either have the choice to be closed-minded to the coaching and just do the same thing over and over again and hope we get lucky, or to realize like, hey, we're not far off, but let's be a little bit more open-minded to some coaching and so like you'll have more pliable learners once they fail a couple times.
Right. I'm forgetting there's actually one more facilitation point that we can make off of this, is that very rarely do we have a team do pipeline with just 10 or 12 people. We usually have multiple pipelines lined up, and what happens is people will be lined up with their pipeline, but looking behind their shoulder at how far the other team has gone, how many points that they accumulated, or how fast they're going, and all of a sudden their ball is in their pipeline. And it's just another point that we can make, like, hey, where should the focus be right now?
Yep. And that's and I'm glad you brought that up. Like that's definitely going to be when we talk about like some of the extensions and modifications of pipeline. Before we get to that though, the other finish line mistake that typically happens, there's always a person in the group that wants to be the one that puts the ball in the bucket. So, and usually it's it's a person who feels very confident in their abilities, which is all good, right? But like there will be a person, perfect position, their tube is set up, it's 2 inches into the bucket, like the golf ball has no choice but to go into the bucket. And then there's this person who maybe wants the glory of being, hey, I was the one who got in the bucket.
Yep.
They'll like run in there and add their tube, and then they'll overshoot the bucket.
It's every freaking time.
My favorite part is that person then has the audacity to blame the person who was set up. Yep. So it, again, sets up some good facilitation. Like anybody on your team can be the person that gets the ball in the bucket. And what's more important, who gets it in the bucket, or do we get it in the bucket? So it gets people to think a little bit differently about how you measure success. Like, are you the person who wants all the accolades? Because then success isn't about the team. Success is about you. Or are you the person that wants the team to have success regardless of who puts it in the bucket, maybe who gets the credit?
It goes without saying.
Great facilitation points.
Yeah, and it's for every type of group as well. This is what I
Yep.
was talking
Yep.
about earlier, where it doesn't matter when we see the same thing from third graders to 45-year-old insurance groups. Like you see the same type of facilitation points come out of both programs.
Yep. Yep. And going on, before we get into the extensions, one of the other things I like about Pipeline is it has a lot of flexibility. So it's an activity that we can run as a straight up like collaborative skill building experience.
Yep.
Where we're not introducing competition, we're not introducing a lot of variables to the experience. Where hey, we're just hey, your group has X amount of time to accomplish this goal, and then we're going to do some teaching and learning off of that. So it can fit in that like teaching and learning middle ground program, and it could also fall into an experience to drive home a professional development lesson, maybe around like role performance, around how do we build trust through our actions, how do we break trust through our actions. So it can set up a lot. It has a lot of play with regards to that. It's also an activity that we can flex into something that's perfect for like a fun outing, competitive team building program.
Yep.
Because some of the extensions and modifications we have in place can adjust it to be something that's like points-based activity.
Yeah, and before we get into the level and like modifications that we can make to make it harder or easier, essentially, it goes without saying that this is one of those activities that I don't think you can do for all of them, where you can bring back multiple times for the same group, and that's something that we normally wouldn't do. Like we're not going to have the same exact program from the same people, but for clients that want us back, awesome, we'll come back. We'll have a whole new set of types of activities for you because we have so many in the arsenal. But Pipeline is a little different. We can put levels to it and bring it back and have even stronger points to make during that program, the next program.
100%. So we've talked mostly about like the stock version right now. So we'll talk about some equipment and space modifications that can make the activity easier or harder, and then we'll talk about kind of a we call it Pipeline Pandemonium, but it's an adaptation off of the stock version. So in general terms, the shorter the distance, the easier Pipeline. The longer the distance between start and finish, the more difficult. We have a high school football team from Jersey every summer that comes up with their rising seniors for a 24-hour overnight program. Their version of Pipeline is about 200 yards long. Our run-of-the-mill version of Pipeline is probably 30, 40 feet long. So there's a lot of flex in there depending on why you're doing the program. So distance,
although distance is one thing, I just want to compliment my girls because they're one of my favorites. But I have a youth 12-year-old soccer team that was able to do 100-yard pipeline. 100-yard pipeline, and they were 12, 13 years old. So it's not about just an age thing or athletes that can do that distance. If they're a good team, if they're coming together, you can put it for as far as
100%. 100%. So distance is a stock variable that you can adjust to make things harder or easier. The other another element with relations to the space or the land that you want, terrain, right? So you want to throw a group for a loop, find an area that has a little uphill rise at some point or a little downhill slope on the land. You know, I'm not talking about an extreme hill here. But in our first 10 years of business, when we had our own outdoor adventure facility here in Middletown, we had about a 200-yard long fairway that had like a slight downhill that was maybe like 15, 20 feet long, but it was very, very, very mild.
Yeah.
And then it flattened out for about 190 yards. And then the last 20, 30 feet had a very slight uphill. And we would do Pipeline, the length of that field, and like the first 10 feet was like the first 10 yards was like a slight downhill slope. So the group really had to figure out how to keep the ball under control and navigate the slope without breaking any of the rules. And then they had this long stretch of flat land where they almost fall into this routine of do it easy. And then the last 10 yards are this slight uphill.
Figure it out again. Yep.
So terrain can extend or like obviously to make it easier, you would want to find short distance flat space
Yeah. And I mean, before we move on to the next level, but terrain is one. And if you don't have 200 yards to play with and you only have 20 feet or 30 feet, what you can do is you could have the bucket at the start cone. And the goal is to get down 20 feet around a cone with the ball, with your pipeline, and back and dropped into where your starting point was. And then maybe it's not a hill that you're working with, it's a curvature.
Yeah. Or it's a raised bucket, right?
Yeah.
So like
Yeah.
that was the other so you could adjust the equipment. Actually, before I get to equipment, the last space wise, you could also do checkpoints.
Yes.
So you have to go so you could almost set up like a slalom where you have to go 45 degrees angle to the right, go through 2 cones, 45 to the left, go through 2 cones, and then loop around and go back. So like there's all sorts of ways to play with the distance and the terrain to add or decrease level of challenge. Equipment is another one. So you can use I think right now our stock version we use they're like 2 or 3 gallon buckets. So they're not huge. They're large enough to easily fit a golf ball. There's times where we might turn a 5 gallon bucket upside down and put the 3 gallon bucket on top. So they're going to a higher target area, which can make it more challenging or less or even less challenging for some groups. And then I've run it at times with like a coffee cup, a coffee container, small, short target that they have to get it into.
Even worse, I'm calling you out. You've had it where they had to land it on top of a cone that had a top this big, and the ball had to balance onto the top of the cone. So they're coming down not only 50 yards, but now you have to trust somebody, whoever that ends up being, or you organize it to drop it onto that cone if they drop it.
Literally sit on that pedestal. Yeah. Awesome.
That's another one.
Have more.
Yeah.
So that's an equipment modification. Another equipment modification is the object you're asking them to roll.
Yep.
So golf, I learned the game with a golf ball, and to me, that's always been like the staple
stock
version. So how do we make it easier? Right. Well, we get an object that moves slower, is easier to control. We've used like wiffle ball, like larger wiffle balls. We've used tennis balls. We've even with some groups used like smaller dodgeballs.
Yep.
Anything that has some more friction, which is going to provide the group with a slower pace of play, which gives them more control over what's happening. Those are some ways to modify the activity, make it a little less challenging. On the other end of that, we can go from using a pipeline to a marble or like a super ball. Super ball is kind of a little bit of a step harder than than the golf ball because it's smaller, it moves faster, but it also has that tacky,
sticky,
feel to it.
Right.
The marble, smaller, moves faster, and there's no friction. That bad boy just flies. There's ways you can mess with the equipment to make it easier, more challenging.
So going off that equipment, yes, there's levels to it when it comes to challenging or less challenging, but then you get to the point of, hey, here are your 3 options: golf ball, marble, or wiffle ball. As a team, once you get past the first version, all 3 in the first bucket, you get to choose which ball, and you get into strategy of which one to use, how often to use it. If you're dropping the marble X amount of times, do we drop down to a golf ball
or whatever the next object
or whatever the case, or do we keep trying? It turns into a whole other facilitation program that you can follow up with.
Yep, yeah, and that's what Zach just described is what we will call like pipeline pandemonium. Pipeline pandemonium's cool. It can be used after the stock pipeline, so like you could use like the basic version of pipeline to like build up the skills, and then you can see if a group can apply those skills to this competitive environment. You can also, which is why I like pipeline because it's so flexible for so many different program types. You can also, if you have a group that's only doing like a fun, competitive team building field day style program, Pipeline Pandemonium would be a perfect station. Typically with the Pipeline Pandemonium, the same rules apply. But there's 3 different targets and then there's 3 different objects. So the tennis ball is only worth 1 point. The golf ball is worth 2 points. The marble's worth 3 points. The closest bucket, the objects are just worth their stock points. The medium bucket, the objects are worth double. The far bucket, the objects are worth triple. So like Zach said, the group has a lot of set, and it brings on that like little challenge by choice mentality, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like if you stink at the marble, maybe trying the marble over and over again for the longest bucket is not the best realistic like decision at that point. Maybe it's a little too risky. Why don't we let's try the marble for the short bucket, or you know what I mean? So like they can kind of build up and progress.
And another thing that you see too is when the ball drops, hits a finger, gets thrown, whatever, you always start at the cone, and they're super excited to get back to the cone and start again. And then when that happens, let's say they're halfway in, I'll call out, "Hey, which bucket we going to? 2-1-3, 2-1-4." They all had different answers, and then I just step away, and all of a sudden, while their ball is traveling, they're talking to each other about which bucket should be the most strategic or the best option or whatever the case, and it creates another level of facilitation.
Yep. So we've covered like space you can adjust. We've covered some equipment adjustments that can flex this game pipeline, this initiative pipeline, and then obviously the last layer is you can adjust the rules.
Yep.
Right. So if I'm running pipeline with like a really young group of students, I'm not going to have the rule where if it stops or rolls backwards, they have to restart. It's going to be too difficult. And as you heard in our last episode, if it's way too difficult, you're setting up withdrawn participants. So I'll say, hey, when you have the ball in your tube, you still can't move your feet and the ball still can't fall, but you can stop it and slow it down.
Yes.
So that's another way. A way to tweak the rules to modify, another way to tweak the rules to extend it, make it more challenging. Hey, same rules, except for this time your tubes can't touch. If the tubes connect to each other, automatic restart. So you can finagle the rules a little bit to flex it. The last, so you're okay. What good is all this? Pipeline's an easy game to replicate. So we have. For our operation, we have about 75 plastic PVC tubes that we've, cut up and accumulated over the many years. We have God knows how many golf balls and marbles and tennis balls. You might be thinking, well, we don't have any of that stuff. There's a couple different options. One, if you did want to get some equipment, go get some pool noodles. Pretty soon, especially at the end of the summer, they will be on sale. Go get some pool noodles, cut them in half. Cut them into anywhere from like 12 to 18-inch sections. Yeah. And then slice them in half. They all have that little hole, right? The pool noodles have that hollow hole through the middle of them. So by default, you create a pipeline set of equipment that you can use on the cheap. And then, go into, if you have an aunt or uncle or a sibling who plays golf, just rip off a couple golf balls out of their bag. The Titleists are usually the good ones for a pipeline. Sarcasm. Yeah. But there you go. And you could probably spend under $30 and have a setup of pipeline for like 50 kids or 50 participants. The other option, especially if you're in like an office setting, you could take a thicker piece of like cardstock paper or like a manila folder and everybody has their own little homemade pipeline tube. Yep. Right. And the same rules apply. So a little ingenuity with kind of what you have or what you have readily available to you, you can very easily replicate this activity in your school, at your office, whatever it might be.
Yeah, if you don't have a 2-3 gallon bucket, a cup or a can, or like you could do, or even a Target. There's so many different things that you can use. And I mean, Dan knows that this is not my favorite, but if you have the pool noodle and you don't have tools to cut it in half, what you could do is have me and Dan face each other. Each have a 12-foot, 18-foot section of pool noodle.
Inches. Zach is talking like giant pipeline here.
So 12, 18 inches of pipeline, and you have to put it together and have the ball, whatever the case is, roll between each other. So if I step back, the ball falls, or if he goes forward, the ball falls, but have that balance to the next two people. It's another level of pipeline as well.
And I can confidently say that's probably the hardest version of pipeline we offer.
It's hard.
Because not only is there coordination just to get your pipeline set up, but then there's the multiple pairs that need coordination. Because again, as Zach described, it's essentially he's holding a tube, I'm holding a tube, and we're tracking the ball in between the middle of them.
Yep.
And if our tubes get too far apart, it shoots down the middle. If our tubes get too close together, it's easy for it to shoot off of the side.
Yep.
But that is that's probably the most challenging version.
I will say, no matter the stock version challenging what Pandemonium, that pipeline itself is really great. This is why we love it, is because you don't have to be a freak athlete to get good at it.
Yep.
You don't have to be a kid or an adult. It works for everybody because you realize that if the ball's under control and you doing your job, you're going to get to the front, even if you're moving slow, and still help your team for the next one. So like, that's why like athletes try to run, or my adult insurance group kept dropping because of a coordinated thing. It's not because of athleticism at all. And that's why it works so well.
Yep. And it brings, again, like, think about wherever you're leading, whether it's in the corporate world, in schools, in colleges, universities, and athletics.
Yep.
Think about the powerful lessons about individual accountability, individual focus on their role, taking action that sets your teammates up for success, not makes their job harder. This slow and steady approach as opposed to the frenetic rush. The idea of controlling the controllable. Like, don't worry about what the other teams are doing, because as soon as you take your eye off the ball, that bad boy is dropping. Trust building actions versus trust.
All of it.
All these lessons through a stupid game of roll a ball through some PVC tubes. Like, I say that facetiously, but that's why Pipeline is a tried, true, and tested team building initiative, is because there's so many learning opportunities from it. It's generally very fun for groups, and it's fun for groups because any facilitator worth their salt is understanding I'm going to be able to adjust this to be the right level of challenge for the group I'm working with.
Right.
And I'm going to be able to front load the fact that, like, hey, if you finish this part, there's going to be an even more awesome challenge that you're going to get to do afterwards. Or if you're struggling tremendously, there's ways we can kind of modify it so we can build up some momentum before we come back to tackle the version of it that we're running. So there's just so many different ways to run it. There's so many valuable teaching tools, and it's very easily repeatable in your day-to-day environment. Pipeline initiative. Boom.
That's it. I mean, like, it goes without saying, we're 42 minutes into this one. We're still talking about one activity. We love it. We love this one.
Yeah, we love it.
It's a great activity.
So obviously the podcast is on our YouTube channel, our Instagram, and other social accounts. We always post when this, but in all seriousness, if you want to try to bring this activity to your environment, Dan at Lead with Empower, shoot me an email. Happy to help talk through it and make sure you're dotting all the I's and crossing all the T's. And Zach's also going to include some cool video and some kind of written or typed content that can help with that process as well.
Try to aim it close. Slow it down.
Whoop, getting close. What's the game plan?
It's coming. We ready? Guys, we need another blocker.
Let's go!
So, Zach, dude, I feel like we could go on and on, but we're not.
We can.
Well, we already did, but we're not going to go any further. But no, thank you all for checking it out, and hopefully you have an opportunity to try it out. And thanks for visiting the Lead with Empower podcast. We'll check you out in the next one.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you, Zach.